Hey everybody, Reed Price here. I play the role of Rob Shandon on Sullivan's Crossing, and you're listening to Corman Productions' Deep Dive TV Podcast with Dave and Stacie.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions. My co-host Stacie here to talk about Sullivan's Crossing, Season 2, Episode 5, titled Secrets. The episode's description reads as follows. Uncertain about her own future, as well as that of the crossing, Maggie tries to find a way to help Sully. The episode was written by Rosanna Roth, and I'm assuming that's some relationship to Roma Roth. And the episode was directed by Melanie Orr. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a sport-free podcast. If you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow, and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corman Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. Alright, shoutouts this week. I got Alpha, who typically doesn't comment on anything other than something Quantum Leap related, said that he has already cast his ballot for Dave and Stacie in the year of 2024. It's not even really clear to me that he even watched this particular podcast.
Probably not.
But he did comment that, so there's that.
It might be a comment on how much content we have released in the last month.
It might be. And here we are on November 1st. We're going to have significantly less content.
Yes, it's going to feel like we're snoozing after what we just did.
Yes, but we still got some exciting stuff to look forward to. And then we have Sharon Greenman. To be honest, I noticed that she commented on a Facebook post. I could not find the post anywhere. But she did say something, and she did, so that's why I'm shouting her out.
Okay.
That's all I got for shout-outs this week. Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode?
You know, I didn't love this one. This episode felt a little disjointed to me. Mm-hmm. I felt like we didn't make any progress. I feel like it was just kind of everyone running around being broody and, like, not getting anywhere, to be honest. Well,
I do give the episode credit for being somewhat more focused on one particular story. I mean, we saw the other characters, but for the most part, it was to touch base on how what's going on with what's going on with Sullivan's Crossing affects them.
Sure.
So in that respect, it's a more focused story.
I mean, I like that we are finally getting to the story of, we're in financial trouble. That, we've been talking about since season 1, episode 1. Mm-hmm. But it's always been on the back burner.
Right.
So I'm glad we're finally there. I don't know. I don't love how it all came together.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything else to say before diving in?
Let's just go for it. And then we'll...
Okay.
Yeah.
So we begin where we left off in the last episode, finding out that the crossing is up for auction. Sully, of course, still doesn't remember this. He frantically looks for an envelope while Edna is like, I'm pretty sure if I had seen a overdue balance from the bank, I would have noticed that, or a foreclosure notice.
Right. I mean, they've been going pretty hard in the books trying to make heads or tails, so it's clear that he hid this letter from them.
This opening scene is unintentionally funny, as both Maggie and Edna kind of just stare at Sully as he goes crazy looking for an envelope. And he eventually finds this, and finds the foreclosure notice in an envelope, and Sully wonders how he could have let things get so bad, and then we have our credits. When we come back, Sully and Maggie are prepared to go to the bank. Sully is beating himself up, which Maggie thinks isn't going to help. Sully says he always thought he passed the place on to her. And Frank and Edna are discussing the situation. Edna is pissed that Sully didn't say anything and doesn't buy the excuse that he didn't want them to worry because they are, in fact, family, and family tells each other everything. And she makes an unintentional dig at Frank, saying, that when you're family, you don't have secrets. But,
right, and you can tell the look on his face how he's feeling bad because we know he's keeping a secret from her about what actually happened with his cousins. Edna is just fuming, and she will be in that same attitude this entire episode. That's all Edna does in this episode.
She's either going to be fuming or crying.
She's just so upset.
Yes.
And she never leaves that space through the whole episode.
So, Cal stops by to try and talk to Maggie, but it's not a good time. Cal learns about the foreclosure situation.
Yeah, he doesn't know yet because Lola doesn't know yet.
Right. So everybody doesn't know yet because Lola doesn't know yet.
Right.
Sydney and Raph. Sydney is not telling him about the returning to New York thing. She gets a phone call, which she pretends is something else, and then Raph ends up going to work, or Rafe ends up going to work.
Yeah.
Lola shows up at the outpost in disbelief that Maggie didn't tell her about the foreclosure situation, and like we just said, if she had, then everybody would know. So do you really blame Maggie for not for her not being her first phone call?
Right. So it's Edna that actually called Lola and told her. And Edna tries to get Maggie off the hook for not telling Lola by basically saying, we just found out last night. Like, it's pretty new for all of us.
Right.
You're not the only one that was in the dark, basically, is what's happening here.
And then we have the meeting at the bank. This predictably doesn't go well. I could have told them this wasn't going to go well because we saw these same scenes happen last season. And they didn't go well last season.
And this is the return of Jan Joseph as Mr. Blake.
Maggie makes an impassioned plea that doesn't end up working. And they must come up with the money within 2 weeks or it's going to auction. Cal is flashing back to his date with Maggie when Lola stops by. He says he doesn't know much about foreclosure law, so he suggests they go and talk to someone who does. Sully and Maggie return back to Sullivan's Crossing. She implores him not to give up, and he goes to be by himself for a minute. She gets a call from fucking Andrew. That's literally that's literally in my note. He's now fucking Andrew in my notes. She explains the situation. She says he says that he is so sorry, but is otherwise useless as always.
Well, he does tell her to contact an attorney.
Right. Okay.
I'm surprised he didn't just be like, "Who cares? Come home."
Right. Yeah.
That's his normal answer.
So he can just live in our garage. It'll be cool.
No, he wouldn't have invited him. He would have just been like, "I don't care if your dad lives in a trash
or
can.
dies." Right.
Just come home.
I mean, okay. So last season he was trying to get Sully to move into their house eventually or something. He was discussing plans about that. So maybe to seem like a good guy, he might have included Sully in these plans. But
they didn't actually buy that house. So.
Right. Okay.
So there is no guest house.
Okay. So Lola...
I'm going to remind you that Maggie and Andrew have never actually lived together. They've never actually lived in the same town.
Right.
He was 2 hours away from her during their entire relationship.
Ah, yes.
Remember? This is where we started the series. And she did not want to relocate to the same town with him.
So I'm going to say this. 2 hours is not far enough for me from Andrew.
Well, he's a lot farther right now.
Yes.
He's, in Canada.
Fair enough.
But,
he could never be far enough away from me. But anyway.
My point is that he's never been that close to her.
Right.
That she's like, we've been together for 2 years, but how much time did you really spend together in that 2 years?
Right.
It's not the same as somebody who, you've already, cohabitated with.
Right, exactly. So, Lola and Cal get an appointment with Mr. Kingston. They go to that. Sully on the dock, and by the way, Mr. Kingston, I'll bring this up now, is played by Stephen McCaddy. And he actually has 220-something credits.
221 acting credits for him.
He was in an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, a very memorable turn in that. He was a Romulan in a very popular Deep Space Nine episode. And he was also in Haven in an episode that I actually recently saw. So
he was in 7 episodes of Orphan Black, 5 episodes of The Strain, and he played Andrew Borden in the Lizzie Borden Chronicles, as well as the movie that was in that same universe.
Gotcha.
I forget which one of the Lizzie Borden movies.
All right. So we're not gonna meet him quite yet, but that's who's playing that character.
Yeah. So she got off the phone with him and was basically like, "Well, he can squeeze us in. We got to go right now."
All right. So Sully is on the dock. He's soon joined by Frank, who's told the meeting did not go well. He thinks that if he loses the crossing, he will probably never see Maggie again, even though he just, got her back. What is he basing that on? Like, it's not possible for him to see her in, in any other circumstances besides owning Sullivan's Crossing.
Well, he feels like he's losing everything. He's spiraling,
Yeah, okay. Frank ends up suggesting a meeting, and then we cut to Sydney. Wow, Fidney. I guess
Finn is in this scene,
yes,
there you go.
I guess it's not an appropriate ship, that's for sure. So he finds Finn at the diner playing a game on his phone. She suggests he read something, and eventually sends him in the back to get a book.
Yeah, because school starts this week, which reminds us, we're still in the same summer.
Right.
This entire series so far has taken place over one summer.
Sydney thinks Clover isn't helping Rob much. No kidding.
Yes, she's not even here. She's out with her boyfriend somewhere. She suggests that he hire someone more reliable, and he's like, I can't afford to hire anyone more expensive right now. Okay, but you could hire someone at the same pay rate she's at that actually wants a job.
Right, yes. As opposed to just paying her to sit on her phone and occasionally watch Finn.
He's not a very good manager.
No. So Rob is worried about the crossing going under might affect business.
Right.
And
this is what Maggie was talking at the bank about, was, this was her whole pitch, is the crossing is not just about Harry Sullivan and her family. The entire community is revolved around this campground. It's like the core of the community, and it closing would affect, everybody in town.
Well, I don't know. I think a golf course there might still drum up some business for Rob.
Yeah, but he's already got the golf course. So
right.
I'm not even sure what he wants to do, Mr. Golf Course Man. Like, are you building a second golf course? Are you going to actually run the campground?
Maybe he wants to build a parking lot for the golf course.
And have boats that take you across the lake?
Hey, that's actually a pretty good idea.
Or are you going to golf across the lake?
Maybe.
Like some, roller coaster tycoon stuff. Remember where you would just build
pretty
stuff
awesome.
In the water?
Yeah.
We'll just build some golf lanes across the water.
You know what? The more we're talking about this, the more I'm sold on this. Anyway, Sydney lets him in on her plans to go to New York. He's skeptical. Like, are you sure this is going to work? You know what happened last time. But ultimately, he's sort of semi-supportive.
He's supportive enough.
Yeah.
She reminds him, that it wasn't the modeling that was her problem that made her leave New York. Not saying, it was that she had some kind of affair with her manager, which I'm pretty sure we're talking about the person she talks to in this episode is Harvey, and she refers to him as her agent. So I'm pretty sure this is a different person than the manager.
It would be nice if we got some clarification for that.
Yeah, I mean, she's called them... I'm not sure what the difference between an agent and a manager is, but she called that guy her manager, and she called this guy her agent. So I feel like they're different because she's using different verbiage.
Maybe the agent is the person who got her a gig, and the gig was the person that the manager was at. I
don't know enough about anything, but I don't think this is him.
No, okay. So Sully goes to the outpost where Edna gives him a piece of her mind. She's more hurt than anything, pointing out that it's her home too, that she could have found a way with him to figure out this problem. And despite the fact that he's apologizing and saying that he's gonna, fix this situation, she's not quite ready to forgive him, and basically just ignores him for after telling Frank to get the flower or whatever. Maggie's at the ultrasound. Thankfully, they actually see something, unlike another show that we could talk about.
Right.
Yes.
This ultrasound went much better than the one on From last week. So Sydney went with her.
Yes.
Again, we know that's the only person who knows about Maggie's pregnancy.
Yep.
In Nova Scotia or Boston.
Right. Yes.
The only person she's told is Sydney. So she goes with her. She hears the heartbeat, gets a sonogram photo, and suddenly it's real for her. Suddenly she's like, oh, wait, I'm about to be a mom.
Right.
And this is going to affect her. She's going to start, seeing some things a little differently now because of this.
And Sully speaks at the meeting in a really emotional speech. Sully says he has spent too many years ignoring his mistakes, he admits all that drinking cost him, which was his marriage, his daughter, so on and so forth. Yeah. And it's a beautifully acted scene.
Now he's blaming what's happening with the crossing on his drinking, but I really don't think that's accurate. He did not start drinking until after he was already in very deep financial trouble.
That's fair.
We saw when he started drinking again.
Yes. And
he was already in deep financial trouble before the series started.
Yep.
So he cannot blame the fact that he started drinking again as the reason that he's in the mess he's in now.
It's the same
It's the reason he forgot about it for a little while and got sick.
Yes.
He might have had more time to figure this out if he was more clear-headed, but he was already in this mess. It had nothing to do with the drinking. It had nothing to do with Maggie coming back, frankly.
Yes.
Because he was already having all these past due notices in episode 1.
It's the same as Cal trying to prove that him being in the hospital for 2 days is the reason for all his financial problems, when we know that's
months and months of missing payments has nothing to do with any of this other stuff.
Right.
The problem is that Sullivan's Crossing has not been profitable. That's the problem.
Edna's giving away
VIP. They need to change something.
Yeah. I mean, stop giving away VIP cabins for free to special guests. I mean, charge them for that shit. Okay, so Frank tells him that he's a good man, and then we cut to Sydney and Maggie as they talk. Maggie thinks it would have worked out with Cal. Once again, reiterates that Andrew makes sense, and I find myself vomiting throughout this entire scene. I cannot stand her just continuing to give the rationale for why Andrew and her make sense. They do not make sense.
Yeah, she's like, he deserves a second chance. He's been working on himself.
And what does that even mean?
I mean, that would be fine if you were committed to him in the first place.
Right.
She never was.
Right, no.
She never wanted to be with him the entire time that this series has been happening. In episode 1, he's like, let's move in together. And she goes, nah.
Basically, this is a logic problem for her rather than an emotional one. She actually really does have feelings for Cal.
Right.
But she's too scared of that to, actually have a deep emotional connection with someone. So she's not going to pursue that.
Right.
She's going to go for someone she doesn't give a and pursue a relationship there, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
But,
and Sydney calls her out on it. She says, I think you're making a mistake.
Yes, and I'm glad
and you know
that she
what my
said that.
note is? Ditto to you, Sydney.
Exactly.
Because take your own advice. You're doing the exact same thing she's doing. You're telling her she shouldn't run away and leave, what's the name of this town?
Oh, Sullivan's Crossing.
Timberlake.
Timberlake, yes.
Timberlake's the town. She's like, you shouldn't leave, right? Because, like, you have unfinished business here. You need to deal with this relationship stuff. You're running away. Sydney, that's exactly what you're doing. You're doing the exact same thing. The only difference is you're not pregnant.
Right, exactly. So Lola and Cal meet with Mr. Kingston, played, like I said, by Stephen McCaddy. Basically, the lawyer tells them that they would need to convince the judge that his hospital stay was the reason he is not current on his bills, which is a lie, by the way.
Right.
And that they, and we'll get to that what they say after that fact. But yeah, basically, there's a suggestion that perhaps Cal should focus on doing small town lawyering.
Yeah, they talk about how he picks up on the fact that Cal sounds like a lawyer, and he's like, I was, but I quit, because it was impersonal. And he's like, well, small town law is much more rewarding than big city law. But yeah, he did say that you would have to prove that you could pay the debt.
Yes. Oh, he did say that in the scene?
He did say that in this scene. Like, we can get an injunction if you can, convince the judge that you had circumstances, which was the hospital. And then all you got to do is, show them you can pay the debt. Which I'm really confused about, because we already know that if they pay the debt in 2 weeks, there's no problem. We don't need an injunction or whatever.
Right, yes.
Like, the bank already said, well, you got 2 more weeks.
Right.
So, I don't understand the point of this.
Right. So, Edna is grieving about the possibility of losing Sullivan's Crossing. She's doing this to Maggie, and she ends up crying.
She's talking about, Maggie took her first steps right there. And meanwhile, she's packing up some onesies to ship to John and Ellis. I remember they had a baby last week for no reason in the middle of a storm. For no reason, in the scene, I mean.
Right. I got what you mean.
And, Maggie was like, who's that for? And I think she was like, wait, do you know? I think she thought, that this was about her.
Yep.
Anytime she sees any baby stuff happening.
So Lola and Cal arrive with the good news. Only Maggie does not believe they can come up with that money, the amount of money that they need in 2 weeks.
Right. So I think what happened is Lola and Cal didn't know that it's a financial problem. They thought it was literally he was in the hospital and missed a payment problem.
So I'm a little confused here as to why Lola and Cal did not include Sully in this little venture to Mr.
Sully
Kingston.
Wasn't there. He was at the bank talking to Mr. Blake when Lola first came. So she went to Cal because, she's looking for a reason to include Cal, and it's the right person to go to. He is a lawyer.
Sure, fair enough.
And they were just like, let's find somebody, and then Kingston said, come right now, so they hadn't had a chance to loop anybody else in yet.
So it seems that it would have been more productive if lawyer...
If we all were on the same page?
Yes, if the lawyer actually even knew what the situation was. Because all he has is Cal and Lola talking about a situation that they don't know anything about.
They learned 2 things about 5 seconds ago.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So Maggie calls Dr. Callahan to pass on a job in Boston. Sully returns home, and Maggie tells him that news, and that she has an idea about saving the crossings, and he's all like, oh, do tell.
Because she tells him she wants her kids to be raised here, and I thought she was about to tell her father that she's pregnant. She didn't.
Yes, no.
She's talking about her fictional children, not the one that's literally growing.
Right. So he's all for it until she mentions that she wants to take a loan from Walter and Phoebe, and then he completely changes his tune to over my dead body.
Yeah, because, he's too good to ask his ex-wife for money.
Yes.
And I'm going to go ahead and say, because I'm going to bring this up, something I talked about, I think all the way back in 1-1, was that this is leading to a fundraiser.
Yes.
I don't feel like a loan is the right way, but they are socialites. They know how to raise money. Use them to build a fundraiser, and let's save this place.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
I said way back, 15 episodes ago that's what's going to happen. I'm sticking with it. That's what should happen anyways, is we need to raise money, not borrow money.
Gotcha. So Rafe comes home to Sydney.
She's printing her plane ticket.
Yes.
To go to New York, tries hiding it from him, but then she comes clean.
Yeah, she tells him the news. He kind of overreacts to this a little bit.
You think so?
I think so, in the sense that they are not actually an official couple.
No, but she kind of came around last week and was like, never mind, I changed my mind, let's sleep together.
And then went the other direction.
And then she is sneaking around that she's literally leaving the country in 2 days without telling him.
All right, fair enough. I think
the problem is that she is not communicating with him.
Right,
That's
yes.
the problem. It's not so much like the fact that she wants to go explore this career opportunity. It's that she's constantly been lying to him about it. She literally hid the ticket behind her back and was like, oh, it's nothing.
Right. And then what was her plan? To just disappear?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is she's not being a good communicator either way. She's leading him on, and meanwhile packing her bags to leave.
Wow.
That's the problem.
So I'm thinking maybe I don't want to be involved with Sydney.
Sydney, doesn't make the best choices.
No, well, she just definitely does not make very good decisions. Anyway, Sully fumes at the outpost. Frank asks him if he would even consider the loan, and pretty much no. And Edna is basically pissed at him for she doesn't even.
She hasn't stopped being mad.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to say this was a chance. This was a moment for Sully to be like, we have a possible solution, we have a possible way forward, and she might have turned right here and been happy that is progressing. But instead, he's like, yeah, there's a solution, but we're not going to go for it.
Right.
And she just leaves. And at this point, I can feel like Frank is getting just as mad at Sully as Edna is.
Yeah.
Because he's like, what do you mean? You have a chance to save the crossing and you're not going to take it?
Right.
Is your ego that big?
Stubborn pride. I mean, I get it. I certainly get his distaste for taking money from Walter specifically.
Right.
But
you're kind of at the end of your rope here.
Right. Yeah.
You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. So he ends up calling the golf course person.
We don't know yet who he's calling.
Okay.
But yeah, he is calling Glenn Perry. And
he says he's reconsidered his offer, though he hasn't really. He's proposing a different offer.
Yeah, he said, I changed my mind and I'd like to discuss a deal. Before that, he looks through the I just want to mention this, the guest book, and we see a bunch of the messages the guests have left. He reads one of them out loud. It's a passage from the Fishes, and I'm pretty sure the Fishes, I didn't go back and look this up, but I'm pretty sure that was the gay couple from season 1.
Okay.
That Edna gave the VIP cabin away to.
Right.
That you had just brought up.
Yes.
Remember? I think that's who that was. That was
okay.
the Fishes. So, they're all really happy, but...
Right. The place is going to close anyway because they didn't get paid for the VIP cabin. But anyway... So, Raph and Sydney, again, Raph says he can't keep waiting for her to figure out what she wants. She says he's right.
So it's the next day now.
Yeah.
He didn't come home last night. He slept at the station. They are acting like a couple in a fight.
Yes. And she decides to head back over to Rob's. Now, I'm pretty sure somewhere in the scene, because you had a conversation that you looped me into, with Reed Price. Wow. Suddenly I couldn't remember the name all of a sudden. But yeah, you would loop me into a conversation with Reed Price that he said that there was a deleted scene.
Yeah, so, okay, the press photos for this episode.
Yep.
We get press photos from 2 places. We get press photos both from Bell for the CTV Canadian airing and from the CW for the US airing. Now, we are recording along with the CW US airing because we're in the US. That's what we get to see. But I take press photos from both because they both give them to us, and they're different photos usually. So we use both of them. And those are the photos that, you guys can see while you're listening to us if you're on YouTube. And there were photos in this week's, folder that were not, from a scene that didn't happen. And when I'm taking my notes, I'm like, did I miss that scene? Was I looking at my phone the first time I watched it? I was like, I must have just not been paying attention for a minute, right? So I'm watching the second time really closely. I mean, I am anyway, so I'm taking notes, but I'm like, there's supposed to be the scene between Rob and Rafe. I'm waiting for it. I must have missed it. It must be really quick. Because there's like 3 or 4 press photos from that scene. And I get through the episode like, that scene didn't happen. Why is it in the press photos if it didn't happen? And I said it must have happened in the original airing, right?
Yeah.
In the Canadian airing. So yeah, I asked, it was a conversation we already had open with Reed and Lindura.
Oh, yeah, okay.
She hasn't jumped in on it yet, but it was from, when we interviewed them together.
Yes.
So I was like, because she had shared those specific photos the day that it aired on the CW and was like, check out tonight's episode.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm like so confused. Like, but we didn't see that scene, and you're sharing the photos from that scene specifically. And so I was like, okay, did this air in the Canadian version? Like,
right.
And so yeah, Reed confirmed that the CW cut it for time.
Gotcha.
So it did air in the Canadian version, did not air in the US version.
And my joke, of course, in that conversation was that I felt robbed of a good Rob scene.
Right, because we always want more of Rob.
Yes.
We did get a lot of Sydney in this episode.
We did. In fact, Sydney has been more present than...
yeah, Sydney's been kind of involved in everybody's stories.
Yeah.
She's got her stuff with her family, with Rob and Finn. She's got her stuff with Rafe. She's got her stuff being friends with Maggie. She's the one in on Maggie's secret. She's been helping at the outpost. So she's kind of everywhere.
Right.
But yeah, not so much Rob. We only ended up getting Rob in that one scene where we're talking about Finn.
Right.
For like 30 seconds.
Right.
So yeah, we were trying to figure out if that deleted scene took place before or after this scene.
Now,
was it the night before when he left for the night and that's when he talked to Rob?
That would make the most sense.
Or was it after this?
Yeah.
After this conversation where they kind of break up even though they're not together?
Well,
this is a breakup scene.
You know who would have seen the scene is Skylar Anderson because he saw the original scene.
Everybody in Canada has seen this scene and we haven't.
Yes.
So we sound like idiots that we're just deleting scenes, but we're not the ones doing it. It's the CW.
Right. Yes.
Okay, so in this scene that we did see, it's a breakup scene, even though they're not actually dating. She's kind of like, yeah, you're right. You deserve better than me. And she says she's going to go back to Rob's, for the 2 days until she leaves the country.
Right.
And he's like, okay, leave your key on the table. And he leaves again. And she's so upset. And I'm going to tell you something right now. When a woman tells you you deserve better, she does not want you to agree with her. She wants you to fight for her.
Okay.
Okay. And when she says she's going to pack her things and leave, she did not want him to agree with her. She did not want him to say, leave your key.
I think at this point that Rafe is just kind of sick of her shit.
Oh, yeah, he is. But this isn't how she thought this conversation was going to go.
Yeah.
When she was like, I'm going to pack my things and go to Rob's, she expected him to be like, don't do that. Let's talk.
Right.
She wants him to give her a reason to stay. I'm pretty sure that's where she's at.
Okay.
Like, she doesn't know what she's doing, and she wants to go to New York, but she also, really likes him. And I feel like if he really, gave her a reason and said, I don't want you to leave, she might not leave. Or at least she'd have a real conversation with him about it, which they still have not done.
I mean, she could have had that conversation anytime she wanted to.
Right, but...
She decided to play these little games to pretend, hiding this whole thing from him, rather than talking to him. So it's a two-way street here.
Sure it is. But I'm just saying, she didn't expect him to be like, leave your key. She had no idea that's how this was going to go when she started this conversation. Maybe
that scene with Rob and Rafe that we did not get to see influenced him to do this, basically to...
Right.
So
that scene, which we didn't see, but according to Reed Price, that's Rob.
Yep.
It was a scene between Rob and Rafe, and I'll quote what Reed had to say about it. He said, it was Rob giving Rafe a little advice on letting things you love go sometimes. And it was a nice little scene.
So it seems that Rafe ends up taking that advice
and telling her to go.
Yes,
but he wasn't nice about it. He was mean. He was breakup-y about it. He wasn't like, I get it. Go, explore what you want to do, and if you want to talk, we can talk. He was just like, goodbye. Leave your key. I don't want to see you again. I'm leaving. He walks out.
Yeah, I get all that. I'm not really defending how Rafe took any of this. I thought his initial reaction was a little bit over the top in his anger. I get it, but I think he could have been a little calmer in that scene. And he just seems like he's just fed up at this point.
Sure. I mean, here's the thing is, they're not in a relationship.
Right.
But he wants to be. He has wanted to be the entire time.
Yeah.
And she moved in with him to be his roommate. And the whole situation has just been super, super weird the entire time.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't blame him for being like, I don't know what we're doing and I'm over you treating me like this.
Right.
But also, neither one of them has really pushed for the conversation. Mm-hmm. Because this is what happens when they, we're in a place where we should talk and he leaves. He keeps leaving. He keeps leaving his own apartment because she's there instead of having an actual conversation.
Gotcha. But I don't know. I'm not even convinced that if he had tried to have the conversation that she would have actually had the conversation, because he's tried in the past and she's kind of shut him down.
He tried to have the let's be together conversation, but they've never really talked about, what does she want to do? She always said, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but they've never had a conversation about it.
Gotcha.
He's never helped her deal with, what are your options? Well, what are you going to New York for?
Right.
We've never had the conversation of hey, maybe you can model here.
Right.
The same way nobody's ever had a conversation with Maggie about, hey, doctors exist in Canada too.
What do you know? I mean, and these people could definitely use a doctor, for sure.
These are the conversations that need to be had. Is everybody stop trying to freaking leave Sullivan's Crossing because the name of the show is Sullivan's Crossing. You need to stay here.
Right.
You have to.
Yes. It's the rules. You're trapped in this little TV universe where you must stay in Sullivan's Crossing. All right, so
anyway,
moving along, because I think we spent a lot of time on that. Maggie,
I was really concerned about this situation.
Were you?
Well, you saw, I had to reach out to the actors to find out about this 1 minute scene we didn't watch. I'm invested in what's happening with Rob and Sydney.
Yes, indeedy. So Maggie talks to Edna. Frank comes in saying his plants didn't survive the hurricane, and Edna's all, well, it's okay, we can plant them next year. And Frank's like, well, not if he doesn't.
Yeah, it was kind of the reminder that there might not be a next year.
Right. Yes. So
Edna gets upset all over again because I think she forgot for 30 seconds that she's supposed to be upset.
She leaves. Frank goes after her. I assume that's what he's
Maggie
doing.
Says she'll watch the store so Frank can go follow her
and have their little fight or whatever the heck, or Frank can comfort her. And I don't think we see any of that ever again.
I don't think the next time we see them is when they came back. So
gotcha. So Sully wants to bring the golf course guy in as a minority partner.
He has a meeting with him.
Yep.
And I didn't know how to write this. At first, I started to write they went out, to have a meal. I was like, oh, they're not eating. Oh, they're having a drink. And then I'm like, well, Sully's not drinking, obviously.
Right.
But Glenn is drinking. They're just sitting at a table, and Glenn's having a drink, and Sully's just sitting there. So then my notes just said Sully sits down with Glenn. So
right.
I was like, what are they even doing?
Yeah, so he wants to bring him in as a minority partner. He can advertise for the golf course in his business, and basically Glenn says he'll think about it. I don't think he's going to think about it.
Yeah, it seems like it would be a good relationship, right?
Yeah.
If they'd had this conversation at the beginning of the summer, before the foreclosure.
Right.
Before Glenn knows that he can swoop in and just take the whole thing for pennies.
Yeah, the problem here is that Sully is basically playing with no cards.
Yeah.
And he's trying to basically trying to make a equal arrangement, so to speak. And there's nothing equal here. Glenn has all the power in the situation.
Glenn knows that Sully needs the money. And without the money, the golf course or the campground goes up for auction. And who wants to buy it?
Right.
Glenn does.
Right. Yeah.
So
Cal visits Maggie, and Cal wins the award for being the only one who's a clear communicator in this episode, or even in this series.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
He basically says that, he has feelings for Maggie. He would like to talk about the situation, about the whole children thing, that he knows that conversation upset her. But Maggie is not interested in having this conversation. She just completely shuts him down.
She says, it might have worked out differently if we met at a different point in our lives. Meaning if she hadn't gotten pregnant,
right,
she might have been cool with this.
Well, I would say that Cal and Maggie met before that situation, but whatever.
Right, but because that's where they're sitting at now.
Yes.
She's like, it can't happen. It can't happen between us because we want different things. And I don't think it's literally that they want different things. It's the fact that she's having a baby.
Yes.
It's already here.
Yes.
Now, she still hasn't told him.
Yes.
Which is, that was Sydney's whole thing, is just tell him, and then you could actually have the right conversation.
Right.
Instead of having all these really weird hypothetical conversations
because
that he doesn't know what you're talking about.
He's just completely confused here. Like, he as far as he's concerned, he has feelings for her. He's pretty sure that she's into him, or the other way around. I meant to say that. He has feelings for her, and she also has feelings for him. He's pretty certain that's the case.
Right.
But
he reminds her, that she's the one who said she keeps pushing people away when they get close.
Mm.
And he begs her, stop pushing me away, and let's give us a chance. And she's like, can't do it. And he gives up. Like, he has this moment where he's like, fine, and he leaves. And she starts crying.
Right. And I'm sorry, but Maggie, you should have just told him.
Tell him the reason that you're saying this.
Right. And maybe Cal...
And then it's something he can think about.
Right.
And then you can talk about it.
Yes.
The actual thing that there is to talk about.
Right, yes. The elephant in the room, the baby in the anyway.
That she's the only one that knows about.
Right.
So he obviously can't respond to it properly without knowing what the heck you're even talking about.
But kudos to Cal just weighing it out on the table. Like, look,
sure.
I have feelings with you. I want to try this. Let's do it. And, of course, nobody else in this episode is willing to, risk their heart in any kind of way like that.
Right.
Cal very much is, and nobody else in this episode or in the series even is. So Sully lets Frank in on the plan about Glenn. Frank doesn't believe in this guy because Glenn, of course, visited the Sullivan's Crossing.
Yeah, this is the first time that Sully's hearing about that.
Yes. And,
about how he came. They didn't get a good feeling from him.
And so he's like, you and your stupid feelings, it'll be fine. And just then, we see Phoebe drive up. I'm assuming Walter's in the car as well.
Well, I'll tell you who's in the car, because it was in the trailer, which you probably didn't see, because I watched it.
Yes.
I watched it during its linear broadcast on the CW, so I saw the trailer for the next episode. Andrew is with her.
It's fucking Andrew.
It's fucking Andrew.
All right. Well.
So I don't think Walter's with her. Because the description for this episode...
I did happen to read the description.
Says there's 2 visitors, so I don't think Walter's with her.
Gotcha.
But, so again, everybody's about to, actually have a conversation, in this case, about, what is going on with Glenn Perry? What do we all know about him? Because maybe we should all talk about what we know and actually work on this together, like Edna wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
But they're interrupted, because everybody's always interrupted, and they're interrupted by Phoebe, and Sully just looks at Maggie like, really? You called her? I told you not to.
Right.
And when did she do that? How did they even get here? When did this happen? Because how long does it frickin' take them to get to Nova Scotia?
Apparently they have transporting technology.
They do.
Because it was right away.
Phoebe and Walter and Andrew do. Because they go back and forth between Nova Scotia and Boston like it's, a trip through a tunnel. So yeah, and that's where we end the episode.
So, presumably, Andrew is going to find out about the whole baby thing?
According to the preview, we're definitely going to address that next episode. He's going to find the sonogram picture.
Oh, okay.
And I bet you he's going to say, whose baby is it?
I'm sure, because, that's the kind of guy he is. But anyway.
That's what half of the audience is saying, because people don't pay attention.
What is half the audience saying?
Whose baby is it?
Oh, they're still asking
that question?
They're still
asking that question. I don't know if it could have been made any more clear that Maggie and Cal have not gotten anywhere.
Right.
Every time they have a kiss, there's been 3 kisses now, and they make this biggest deal out of it ever. Obviously, that's as far as they've gotten.
Yes.
But people are still wondering if it's Cal's baby.
It is not.
The fandom.
That has never happened. But unfortunately, it has happened with Andrew, with fucking Andrew.
But Andrew's not going to believe that that didn't happen, and I bet you he's going to question that.
Wow.
That's my guess. But yes, according to the trailer, he finds the sonogram, and she's going to be forced to have a conversation with him about that.
Okay.
And presumably Phoebe's here to help.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to go well.
No.
I don't think any of this is going to go well. I think it's going to be a big fight next week.
It never does
with everybody.
When any of those 2 characters are involved.
Those 3 characters.
3, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know where Walter is. I don't think he's with them.
I don't want to see him. I'm good.
Maybe he's off, laundering money or whatever we learned he's doing.
Committing crimes, the usual.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have anything else to say about this episode before concluding?
Just the whole thing about like that deleted scene, it really makes me think that the CW is cutting scenes a lot.
You know, if that's the case, it could be why some of these stories are not as coherent as they could be.
Like why a lot of especially our side character stories seem flat. Like we bring that up a lot. That it's like, well, what was the point of that if we're not going to do anything with it?
Right.
And I feel like I wonder if that's the stuff they're cutting, because that's what they cut here. They cut a scene between Rob and Rafe. I know for a fact they did. You know, Reed told us that not only the scene exists, but it was released in the Canadian version, in the original aired cut. Like, scenes get cut for time all the time.
Sure.
But the fact that it was in the version that aired in Canada and then was cut for the U.S. viewing.
Yeah.
That's the deal here, is we're not seeing the original cuts, and now I know that for sure. So I did look at some of the... because, you know, I can pull up CTV and I can see the episodes and I can see the runtime. I just can't actually play them, because when I click to play them, it's like, this cannot be watched in your country. But I can see the play times, like the run times. Okay. So I compared, like, I didn't look at season 1. I just looked at the episodes that have aired so far this season. I compared the CW times and the CTV times. And in pretty much every episode, the CW times are 2 minutes or so shorter than CTV times.
Interesting.
So I'm pretty sure they're cutting scenes out of every episode.
Okay, and that could...
Which means we're not getting the full story that we hear in the U.S.
So that could totally explain some of my criticisms of every single episode.
Because, you know, a 2-minute scene, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it could be.
Yeah.
It could be something, you know, significant to all these side stories.
You could do a lot in 30 seconds, never mind 2 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's not a full scene they're cutting every time. You know, they're trimming here and they're trimming there.
Yeah.
But the point is they're aiming for shorter run times than what CW is giving them.
Gotcha.
So they're cutting stuff out. And what they're cutting out, we only know if we happen to catch on to something like this.
Right, yeah.
But you know what it also could explain is some of the IMDb discrepancies.
Oh, yeah, so it's
when
possible.
we're like, well, I thought Jane was in this episode. She's in the IMDb for this episode, by the way.
Jane.
She's been in the IMDb like 4 times, and we've only met her once. Is it possible she's been deleted from other episodes? Sure it is.
Huh. Interesting.
Which means, like, eventually we're going to see a scene where her and Rob get together, and it's going to seem out of the blue for us, but... maybe it wasn't in the original airing because there were these other moments between them that got cut out.
Wow.
Possibly. That's my guess.
Well, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, so I want to find the original versions of this series now, because I feel like we're not getting the whole... I feel like we're not getting the whole story.
There's certainly ways to do it.
There are ways to do it. I'm looking for a legal way to do it.
Yeah.
I really want a DVD release.
Mm-hmm.
Full uncut episodes. So does that exist?
I'm not sure. I mean, it might in Canada, but is that something that's viewable here in the United States? That's an open question.
I don't know much about any of that.
Because I know that there's like regions where like certain DVDs can play in certain regions, but not in others.
Right.
But
I think Canada and the U.S. are in the same region for DVDs.
I would think so,
Maybe.
But yeah.
All right, so actors this episode. We talked about Mr. Kingston. The OBGYN technician was played by Naomi Voigt. The only other credit she had was in a movie called Crawdaddy.
Okay, I've heard of that.
And according to IMDb, there was a listing for a diner patron. I did not pick this person out. Maybe it happened during the deleted scenes.
Probably.
Diner patron, and they weren't in the episode credits, so the CW didn't give us this, but it's on IMDb, that there was a diner patron called, named Daphne Stephen, and do you know who she is? I would have recognized her if we saw her, and I didn't see her.
No.
She is the librarian creature from From.
Oh, okay. Didn't we recently talk about her appearing in something else?
I don't know.
Huh.
No, you're thinking of the librarian from,
yeah. Halloween Party? Yeah.
The actress that was the librarian in Halloween Party popped up recently.
In
either From or Sullivan's Crossing. It would have been one of those.
Actually, I think they...
Or both.
This is Genevieve Steele, so I think she appeared in both Sullivan's Crossing and From.
But this is... actress I'm talking about is the librarian creature in From.
Gotcha, okay.
Who apparently had some appearance somewhere in something Sullivan's Crossing, according to IMDb.
Okay.
But I didn't see her. Could be a different episode, or it could be a cut scene. Who knows?
Right.
Let's see. And then IMDb again said Jane's in this episode. She wasn't. For us, anyways. And again, we got to see Mr. Blake come back, Jan Joseph. I don't think we've seen him since like 1 to 10.
Yes, yep.
So he's back. And Harry, of course, made another Armstrong.
Yeah, I actually am very curious to see the original cut myself and see if it makes the episodes more coherent,
right?
Or if like
what
some of
do
the
you do
sides,
in CW?
yeah, some of the side stories are a little stronger because some of the material was cut from those scenes,
right?
So yeah, that would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Is that it for us?
That's all I've got for this episode.
All right, we'd like to hear from you. What'd you think of this episode? What'd you think of this podcast? Stacie can be reached at.
I can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy. You can join the Core Productions membership for 99 cents. And of course, like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell so you're notified when new content drops. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions signing off.